Hello and welcome to this edition of Wineskins. I'm your host, Father Jim Korda. Wineskins features reflections on the lives of the saints and the sacred scriptures, along with thoughts on a variety of topics and issues from a Catholic perspective. It is brought to you by the Annual Bishop's Appeal, the Catholic Communication Campaign, and St. Paul's Catholic Books and Gifts, a division of the Society of St. Paul. On our show today, we will enjoy an interview that I had with Geno Capone. We will also look at the life and times of St. Blaise, and we will hear a reflection on the readings for this fourth Sunday in Ordinary Time. That and more coming up on Wineskins. In our current issue today, we will hear from Mary Fiala on Catholic Schools Week. Joining me again is Mary Fiala, who is a Superintendent of Catholic Schools for the Diocese of Youngstown. Welcome back to Wineskins.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Last time you were with us, you gave a wonderful State of the Union as to our Catholic schools and their safety and so forth. And now we find ourselves once again in the midst of Catholic Schools Week. And there normally are a lot of programs, a lot of activities. People come and go. But those things have probably changed somewhat. What are some of the new implementations concerning Catholic Schools Week and also those who come on a normal basis to the school?
Sure. Well, one of the things that we do during Catholic Schools Week is give our families and our students and our teachers that opportunity to take a moment and really think about the value and the experience of Catholic education. And so just as we have had to make adjustments throughout the year in how we celebrate, we'll be making adjustments as to how we celebrate that week as well. There will be things that happen at the school, but with restrictions in place, we will be offering more virtual type experiences. We have gotten pretty creative of doing celebrations virtually by trying to keep our families involved through virtual means, and as we plan those celebrations, those will be the things that will be in place.
It's interesting when we come around to Catholic schools, it seems like the theme centers around those hallmarks of Catholic education: learn, serve, lead, and succeed. Why do we need to continue to lift those four up?
Those are key elements as to how we live out our mission. We are a mission of the church, and so our role as Catholic schools is to support that mission. We do that by nurturing the faith of our students and of our families. That is a key element. We also do that by really inspiring learning and knowledge. That learning and knowledge and the ability to think critically are tools that our students are going to need as they grow into the world. And that fits with their Catholic faith because we also teach them how those things are integrated into their lives, and that will make them better servants as they move into their adult lives. So we also encourage service because that is a hallmark of our faith. During this pandemic times, we've had to do service in different ways than what we have done it before, but that is still important. And leadership is another area that we believe will help our students succeed, not only for their future, but for the future of their communities and the future of our country and world.
In our last few minutes of our time together, I'd like to focus on that word service again. Oftentimes when we think of service, we think of projects that the young kids do in order to put them in touch with the needs that are of our fellow human beings. But maybe during this pandemic, service is to their fellow students or their fellow teacher or so forth. So how is that element of service being celebrated within those schools themselves?
Sure, absolutely. Being aware of the needs of the people around them right now are probably even more important than normal. All of our students, our faculty, our families are experiencing uncertainty, and they're experiencing perhaps some depression. And to be able to help our students, we have to be mindful of that, and we have to be mindful of the needs of all of them. And so helping our students, helping our faculty to really tune into that is a key element. If we can't do that well, we're not going to be able to do the other things that I spoke about out well either.
Let's remember the teachers who put in lots of time and energy, and that is one of the gifts that we have in the Catholic Church are our Catholic school teachers. Give a shout out to them.
They have been absolutely amazing. From last March through now, they have had to learn new things. They have had to figure out new ways of being present to their students. They have had to learn skills in teaching and in technology that some of them were very new to them. And they have been faithful. They have been determined. And we are so grateful for the gift that they have been for us. They have been absolutely amazing, and we would not be able to operate without them. And I would also like to bring a recognition to our administrators who have worked tirelessly from March through. Many of them had very little time in the summer because they were determined to make sure that their schools were safe, that their teachers had what they need so that they can be successful for our families and students this school year.
Mary Fiala, we of Wineskins certainly appreciate principals, the teachers, the staff of our Catholic schools, and for the wonderful service that they provide to the children, to the parents, and to our communities. For Wineskins, I'm Father Jim Korda. To tell us more about the life and times of St. Blaise is Diana Hancharenko. She is a young adult minister at St. Angela Merici Church in Youngstown.
According to the Latin Martyrology, the feast of St. Blaise is celebrated on the day of his death. His feast is found in the calendar of Naples in the 9th century and in Rome in the 10th century. His cult became widespread in the 11th and 12th centuries, especially in Germany, where he was considered a helper in need. Blaise, the Bishop of Sebaste in Armenia, is the only representative of the Armenian Church in the Roman liturgy. Biographical details are very scarce, and therefore his legend has been embellished so much that he has become one of the most popular saints in the Middle Ages. The first representation of Blaise is found in the lower church of the Basilica of St. Clement in Rome, dating back to the 9th century. His relics were widely distributed, which is evidence of his popularity. It is said that during the persecution of the Christians in Sebaste in the year 320, that the governor imprisoned Blaise in a cave, and that wild beasts came to him to be cured. It is also said that a mother came to the bishop, asking him to cure her son who was choking on a fishbone stuck in his throat, and the bishop saved the boy with a prayer and the sign of the cross. For that reason, St. Blaise is venerated as patron of those suffering from diseases of the throat. He was eventually condemned to death and was beheaded in 316. He is venerated in the East on February 11th and in the West on February 3rd. In many churches of the Latin Rite, 2 candles are tied together or held together in the form of a St. Andrew's cross and applied to the throat as the priest pronounces a special invocation to St. Blaise to protect the individual against diseases of the throat. During the 15th and 16th centuries in Germany, St. Blaise was invoked in cases of hemorrhage and ulcers. In the opening prayer of the Mass, we ask God through the intercession of St. Blaise to give us the joy of his peace in this life and eternal happiness in heaven. If St. Blaise is invoked as a powerful intercessor for the health of the body, it is because he was a martyr for the Church. He gave witness to the sufferings of Christ. As a bishop, he also, like St. Peter, heard the words of Christ, "Feed my sheep," meaning, sacrifice yourself for my sheep. The relevance of this feast can be found in the fact that it falls in the middle of winter, as if to remind us that there is no redemption or healing of the body that is not effected through sacrifice. Lord, hear the prayers of your martyr Blaise. Give us the joy of your peace in this life, and help us to gain the happiness that will never end. For Wineskins, I'm Diana Hancharenko.
Talking with Geno Capone, and we're going to talk about your book, God Matters in Everyday Life. You know, one of the things that I'd like us to talk about is that whole idea of relationships. I know that obviously in your life and many lives of people of faith, that relationships are really crucial, whether it's our blood relations, not only extended family, but people that we come in contact with, whether it's through knowledge or faith or contact. Relationships are crucial and important. Yes. Why is that something that needs to motivate us when we're talking about
understanding that God matters in our human life.
Those are great points. And when I wrote the book, one of the reasons that I wanted it to be a simple book for anyone to sit down and enjoy reading, and I wanted it to be shorter chapters so you don't have to feel like, it's an extended read. But almost every single chapter, maybe every single chapter, has to do with relationships, because God is in everything we do. And we fail sometimes to see that. Sometimes we think that God is only at church, or God is only here or there, and we compartmentalize God ourselves when we shouldn't be doing that. I feel that one of the ways I would sign a book for many years was find the extraordinary in the ordinary of your life. And I think St. Therese was probably the first one that, I can say that's where it probably came from, that quote. But she did that, and in her life, it was all about relationships. And we can learn a lot from the saints by reading about their lives and understanding what made them a saint. Because I probably would feel, if you spoke to her when she was alive, she would have felt like she wasn't there yet. Obviously, she even said that in a lot of her writing, she wasn't there yet. So relationships are critical. God meant for us to have them, and we need them to. Jesus said, when 2 or 3 or more are gathered together, I am there. He wants us to be together. He wants those relationships. And we have the Trinity to show relationships are what it's all about.
I'm glad you mentioned St. Teresa of Lisieux, of the Little Flower, because, she is, in her really simplicity, gives us so much to think about and so many examples. And I kind of like the idea that you started it with that, because sometimes we forget that the saints are really with us. Right. And when we gather for whatever, it's important for us to welcome the saints into our midst, because we believe that they're living among us in the same way that someone who has been close to us, who has passed on, still really lives within us and around us. And so calling upon their strength or their wisdom or their faith is really important for us to do that. There's a great quote that I've always loved about St. Therese, and it's, what matters is not great deeds, but great love.
Yes.
How important is that?
Beautiful.
We're just so interested in doing, but loving is difficult, but it's the crucial thing.
When I was younger, and I told you I wanted to have a business someday, and back then it was because I wanted a business. I wanted a business, and I wanted to do something important and great, and I wanted to change people's lives. And as I made this journey through life and all the experiences I've been through and all the ups and downs, growing closer to God, trying to grow closer every year from the prior year. And then I started to realize that it's not about me at all. And when you put it about yourself, that's when it turns ugly, really. It turns into something that God didn't want. And if we put God first in everything, and I even talked to my wife about this interview, and I said, I think at one time I would have loved to do this interview for myself, to say, hey, I was on Catholic Network Television, and I was with Father Korda, and today, as I was driving here, I was always reflecting on is, God, how can I speak for you today? How can I talk for you? Because that's what it's truly all about. Until we understand that, it doesn't matter how much money is in your pocket or what your bank account looks like. You're never going to be happy. What does St. Augustine say? We're only happy when we rest in the Lord and get to know the Lord better. So that's the important part.
I remember reading in one of the chapters where you talked about your dad as a teacher. Your mom was a homemaker, and like many of our parents, one worked and the other didn't. And sometimes those days were difficult because we didn't think about it as children, but as parents, they wondered where were they going to get the next paycheck, and how are they going to provide this for their family. And I remember you talking about your dad, that he did that. Why is it important for us to understand that it's not always things that are important, but it's people, but it's how we love people, it's how we express our faith. Why is that more important than getting in our very highly materialistic age?
Yes, definitely. And I think my mom was the first one to tell me that. She said when I was young, I can remember her saying, You look at the wealthiest people, you look at the stars on television, or you look at the biggest businessman or woman, and you still see, they're taking drugs or drug overdoses or whatever they were going through. And she said, see, money doesn't make you happy. Money doesn't make you happy. She said, it's about, who you love and your family and your friends, and that's what makes the difference. She used to talk about her dad. He had an ulcer, and at the time, Rockefeller had an ulcer. And her dad used to say, you see, with all his money, we still have the same problem we can't fix. At that time, they couldn't do anything. So, money is good. It's a tool. I feel it's a tool. And as Christ told us, give to Caesar what is Caesar. So we use it as a tool, but it should never be our ultimate gain, because you're going to live a very empty life with that attitude. And it's the people around you. You think about it, when someone passes away, it's the person you miss. And you hope that the day that you and I are gone, that people are going to look at us about the shared memories that we created, and not what we spent or the car we drove. You've probably done a lot of funerals in your day. You probably don't ever have anyone saying, you know what I really loved about Bob was his car. That was such a beautiful car he drove. All the stories are about the person, about how they affected our lives, as knowing them and being a part of their lives. And that's truly what we have to concentrate on. If we don't, that's when we're going off on these other directions, and that's when God doesn't matter in everyday life for us.
For more information and to listen to Wineskins, please visit the website www.doi.org of the Catholic Diocese of Youngstown. Stay with us. We'll be right back. This year, in an effort to raise awareness for utility assistance during the cold winter months, Catholic Charities has renamed Keep the Kids Warm to Warm Hearts for Warm Homes. Changing the name and focus allows Catholic Charities to expand their reach beyond families with children, to include working adults and older adults that are poor and on fixed incomes, many of whom struggle to keep up with the rising costs of living. For more information or to make a donation, please visit www.ccdoi.org or call Nicole at 330-744-8451, extension 323. Thank you for helping to keep people warm through the Warm Hearts for Warm Homes program. Our music today is provided by David Kauffman. It is from his CD called A Hand to Hold, and can be found at goodforthesoulmusic.com.
In the presence of God, every breath that we take is deliverance. In the presence of God, every day, good or bad, belongs. In the presence of God, every wound is healing. In the presence of God, no failed journey is wrong. In the presence of God, every life has great meaning and purpose. In the presence of God, every door that is closed is good. In the presence of God, even every pain is soothing. In the presence of God, everything is understood. So come to us now, Spirit of God, open our hearts. presence of God, all that was lost is recovered. In the presence of God, all that was broken restores. In the presence of God, all that was torn is mending. In the presence of God, every ill is cured. So come to us now, Spirit of God, open our hearts. May we know your presence with us now. Wonderful power, your reign is peace, unceasing grace that pours on me, unending mercy, your love is real. Everything, all I come to you. Wonderful power, your reign is peace, unceasing grace that pours on me, unending mercy, your love is real. Everything, all I need, come to me. Wonderful power, your reign is peace, unceasing grace that pours on me, unending mercy, your love is real. Everything, all I need, come to me. So come to us now, Spirit of God, open our hearts. May we know your presence. So come to us now, Spirit of God, open our hearts. May we know your presence with us now.
On this fourth Sunday in Ordinary Time, we will hear more about the sacred scriptures by Deacon Michael Kocjancic. He is from St. Charles Church in Youngstown.
The high school where I taught had its own vocational building for students wishing to learn a trade. One of the first things all students learned in each of their labs was the location of a master switch that would shut off all the power to the lab. The power could restart, but it didn't happen by itself. Someone had to go and push the reset button. Imagine all the power of God that is in us. And yet one switch, sin, can shut it all off. It can restart, but that won't happen on its own. We have to push the button. We have to make an effort. Today's gospel is the first public miracle recorded in Mark, and it happens in the synagogue in Capernaum. Satan's power has ended, and God's power has been made flesh in the person of Jesus Christ. And Jesus does something different. He is teaching them on how God's law is to be lived out, and they are spellbound, amazed at his authority, for he is not using the words from their past scribes and rabbis. The power of God is spoken directly through Jesus. It's plain to see he was the promised one of old, and he never demands to be heard. Instead, let those who have ears ought to listen. And at his word, the quiet that comes out of him, even the unclean spirits obey. Words of such power and authority. We have that same power and authority within us. We have the power to heal instead of harm, to comfort instead of to cause pain, to set free instead of to hold captive, to proclaim the good news instead of living the bad. But do we shut it off like the students could do in the vocational building? Are we living with power bursting forth from every being of ourselves, or do we throw the switch that shuts it off? Now some may say, Deacon, we're not that bad. We don't shut it down completely. And that's probably true. But I'm willing to bet that all of us have a dimmer switch within us. When things are good and bright, we dim the lights. We figure we don't need God that much. But when things in life grow dark, we boost it up and depend on the power of God that is within us. We control the power of God in our lives. We can make it shine bright, we can dim it down, or we can shut it off completely. But if we dim it or shut it off, it won't just restart automatically. We have to make the effort. Just as Jesus spoke with real power and authority, letting the light within him shine, so can we. And not like the scribes who used power and authority to rule and control, but like Jesus, to inspire and encourage with a healing power to a hurting people in a hurting world. Don't dim that light, that power of God within you, or eventually you just may end up shutting the master switch off completely. For Wineskins, I'm Deacon Michael Kocjancic.
Jesus held his grip on the hearts and minds of people across the centuries because he did so with his selfless love. His truths cannot be denied, and his cross tells us that he really cares. Wineskins is made possible through the annual Bishop's Appeal, the Catholic Communication Campaign, and St. Paul's Catholic Books and Gifts. Our program is produced by CTNY, the Catholic Telecommunications Network of Youngstown. I'm Father Jim Korda, thanking you for being with us. Have a blessed week. And we of CTNY also want to express our blessings to all those who work and teach and minister in our Catholic schools.
What have you done for your marriage today?
I gave my wife a hug this morning. I told her I love her.
I did her hair this morning. I think it looks pretty good.
I cooked my husband's favorite breakfast.
I bought her an orchid.
What have I done for my marriage today? I sent my husband a love email.
I read the newspaper to my wife, and it cracked her up. She's still laughing.
What have you done for your marriage today? Make a change for the better. Need help? Go to foryourmarriage.org, a message from the Catholic Church.
They say America is the land of opportunity, but for some, life isn't so easy. Right now in America, 1 in 6 children lives below the poverty line. That's nearly 13 million children of all races, all across our country. Where do you draw the line and get involved? You can make a difference in more ways than you think. Go to povertyusa.org today, because 1 in 6 children in poverty is one too many. A message from the Catholic Campaign for Human Development.